what's sort of on his mind. His job's on the line, right? I mean, it's likely he's not voting the company, he has to speak to the shareholders. He largely doesn't have any real way to predict what's a hit or not. Right? As an industry as a whole, not just this guy's fault, but as an industry as a whole, we don't have good tools to predict what's going to be a hit or not. You know, the shareholder pressure, all those other risks that we talked about earlier on related to original or internal IP. You know, so he's thinking, which one of these do I go? Like, where do I want to throw my dice? Where do I place my bet? And yeah, so what's happening more often than not is you know, they're going in this. I'll just do this you know, it's an easy choice to some extent, right? You know, he's kind of operating in an uncertain environment. You know, I don't know to what extent this is a conscious decision or whether they're even looking at those standard deviations. And some of that is sort of just a gut instinct of, you know, where those kind of curves land, and he's just got a better chance of funding an external IP game and landing on that tight curve versus you know, gambling and landing anywhere. You know, he can land way up here and make 300 crazy millions of dollars, or you know, he can end up below break even. So the trade-off that they're often making is sort of predictability versus sort of breakaway success. And the challenge there is that, you know, the highest point, as we saw in the other curves, the highest point of any external IP is literally half of the highest point of the internal IP. So they're trading off that ability to reach up way high with the idea of kind of getting onto that tightly packed curve. So they're giving up those sort of massive or unpredictable potential success for somewhat more predictable kind of mediocre success. And so that's kind of, and he's still smiling the best. So that's kind of the sort of the trade-off that they're making. Okay, so somewhat related to the risks that we talked about. I mean, so what's the problem, right? So if that executive is always kind of defaulting to that decision, as an industry or even as studios, I mean, so what are some of the problems with that? What are the issues? Anyone want to throw some ideas out there? Yeah.
Margin return for the publisher.
Sorry. Marginal returns. Yes. Yeah, so lower returns, right? Because of this idea that they're making less total money, they're making less money per title, and a chunk of that money is actually going to the licensor, right? So sure. Yeah.
That leads to less money in the industry in general.
Yeah. So lower return. Well, so it's lower returns for everyone, right? For the publisher, for the developer, and in turn, you know, the industry as a whole, right? Yeah.
You lose control of your business, obviously. So, I mean, you see the last point. So this is we add. Having to do kind of lots of into the programs.
Yeah.
That the license is essentially where we control their sales.
Right, so lack of control, right? So if you're sort of beholden to these licensors, in the case of Madden, where EA sort of snapped up the license, well, 2K Games had a lot of investment in football games, and now they can't, they're not allowed to make those games anymore. So it's kind of lack of control. Yeah.
That's our factor when a game comes out in terms of ratings and everything like that, and a lot of word of mouth hype. In terms of games like Bioshock, where it came out as this really different underwater adventure, everyone was enthralled by it. But say, for example, if you went out for a game that was licensed to a film, you know exactly what you're going to get in terms of storyline and setting.
Right, so this kind of unpredictability of new ideas, new worlds.
And the ability to sort of just wow people.
Right. And it sort of speaks to the idea of product diversity, right? If you're just sort of producing games based on movies and so on, you're regurgitating. Well, and that's actually sort of a key point, is that, you know, more and more we're serving other industries, right? We become this kind of service arm where the movie company wants to, you know, add a game because it helps build hype. Well, let's go off to that service industry called the game business and get them to kind of build this widget for us. And so this idea of serving, you become beholden, right? You're serving, other industries, which I guess sort of also speaks to this idea of lack of control. Sorry. There's also the idea. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Probably problems with keeping staff, really, keeping skilled staff because of the interest.
So motivation.
So, really, resources perhaps are going to be an issue in keeping quality up.
Meaning staff prefer to work on new, original. Yeah, so staff staff kind of retention, those are long words, and motivation, right? Whatever, motivation. Yeah.
If you have fans of an existing product, people like the movie or whatever, a game that fails to meet their expectations of the movie, while it may have been fun and its own success, if it was original story and that sort of thing, it fails because it's not the movie, therefore the fans will tear it down or
Right.
not persuade.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is sort of, whether in the known universe or sort of creating something on your own. Well, and maybe related to that is also the idea that many movies, or movies, we're picking on movies, but maybe external properties are not necessarily good for game making, right? I mean, some things are just not attuned to interactivity or the things that we can create as developers. No examples come to mind right now. Sorry?
Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton. Or E.T., I mean,
Do
yeah.
you not think that can bring non-gamers into gaming?
You mean for licenses?
No, with if you have games brought out in new releases, you bring in non-gamers perhaps into the
Sure. Well, now you're getting into the benefits of licenses or external IP, which right now we're sort of on the problems, but that's a good point, yeah.
The quality of products. There's sometimes you need to start trying to game out before the movie.
Right, so...
there's a lot of quality of the product is unsuperior to the ones that have like 5 years behind them.
Right, so that's a good point, right? This kind of the need to get rushed to market, the quality suffers, and that reflects poorly on us, right? That reflects poorly on the game industry. If you put out a bad game, I mean, E.T., it was the game industry that crashed because of that. Not, that didn't affect Spielberg, that didn't affect the movie industry whatsoever. It was us as the game industry that kind of did crap work, and it was our fault. So, yeah.
Secondary markets, for example, if you have something like Madden in the North American market or Western markets, trying to move it into secondary markets like Asia or in could be culturally different markets, doesn't have the same traction as an original IP. Say, for example, World of Warcraft, which is able to cover multiple territories.
Right. So, kind of portability. Portability. So portability is a good one. That if you're, but that's also a challenge for internal IP. You still may have these kind of cultural differences, but certainly something that you create, like whether it's BioShock or Warcraft, is to some extent much more portable and mobile than Madden, NFL, football, American football. Yeah.
Timelines, I guess. I don't know if this is meant to be constrained.
Yeah, we said that timing and quality. Yeah.
You're really going to be games a lot of times determined by the partnership between developer and publisher. On a license party, often a third party in that discussion, making decisions about design, production, that isn't necessarily their core competency. So that two-way discussion can be a three-way discussion.
Yeah. So they kind of
a set of priorities. So it's all about making this fantastic plan, but also about making something that's really brand value for Google.
And to some extent, that also kind of is tied to this idea of lack of control, right? You kind of that third wheel in some cases is involved, and certainly in some instances that has gone well. But at the back there was a
it ties into lower returns. You can't leverage someone else's IP to other areas. You're not going to make money out of a movie based on your game or a TV show or a kid's toy or whatever.
right. So kind of IP leverage, whether it's promotion into whether it's lunchboxes and toys, or even the company as a whole. Many of the companies that have been purchased recently, their valuation goes up massively if the developer actually owns the IP that they've been working on. If they don't own the IP, then essentially the publisher is buying, a build, or not even a building, but bodies and some computers and sort of production capacity. But valuation.
Moves on to royalties as well. Like whether there's a cross-product royalty on the lunchbox and all that feedback to the actual developer.
Yeah, and then that speaks to the idea of lower returns, right? That you got to divvy up the money and so on. So we'll kind of stop here. There's certainly more issues and problems, and there's no kind of shortage. But that being said, there is in fact sort of value in having more of a balance that despite all the sort of risks we talked about, despite all the problems we talked about, in fact, there is